Continuing with the analysis of the poem Birches by Robert Frost, let us look at the critical analysis of the poem. In the poem Birches, we come across Frost's desire to withdraw from the world, as also his love of the earth, as symbolized by the boy's game of swinging birches. The central thought of this poem is that the poet dreams of becoming a swinger on birches once again in his life, as he was during his boyhood. Frost's central subject is humanity and aliveness because it expresses living people. Other poets have written about people, but Frost's poems are of the people and somewhat different. People in Frost's poem work walk about and converse and tell their tales with the freedom of common speech. Birches is among Frost's best known piece and has acquired wide popularity. What places the poem on a distinctly high level of appeal is the true and broad humanity running throughout the poem. In the background of the swinging birches, the imaginary boy's behavior and utterances acquire a philosophical depth and wisdom. In Birches, the poet is weary of considerations that his life involves, but he does not want to escape from his life on earth. He wants to become a swinger of birches, at least for the time being. It is not the feeling of escapism that forms the central thought of Birches, but love for the earth. Although the poet may like to withdraw from the cares and anxieties of the life on the earth, he cannot entertain the idea of relinquishing the earth forever. Frost was no mystic, and perhaps no poem is more expressive of his thought than Birches. Elizabeth Jennings has pointed out. In Birches, he declares earth the right place for love, and goes on to describe his own preponderance for the immediate tangible world and his ability to manage without too much consideration of transcendental things. Climb black branches up a snow white trunk toward heaven till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. The way in which the theme is rendered is dramatic. The sudden shifts in the imagery and the warmth of the human element in it give the poem a dramatic force and intensity. However, the poem cannot be described as a dramatic monologue. Despite the dramatic theme is treated here in elaborate canvas. Birches is one of those poems in which we find a sustained movement of sense, feeling, and rhythm from beginning to end. Brouwer rightly remarked about Birches and the senses tanker. Frost offers a sure standard of achieved form in poetry of talk in an extended nature lyric, Birch, or in a country walker's narrative like The Census Taker. The evolution of feeling and reflection in these poems is carried forward unerringly, means without any mistake, through masterly variation of blank verse rhythm. Both poems start from vivid perceptions of natural or at least country things, and both dramatize a person discovering new meanings or new puzzles in that situation. The poem Birches begins in the tune of easy conversation. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. Some critics, like Alvarez, deny Forrest the title of nature poet and would regard him as rural or country poet. Undoubtedly, Robert Frost's poetry was has an agrarian bias. Agrarian means agriculture to it. So the poetry of a countryman for the countryman. He is a country poet whose business is to live with nature rather than through it. He wishes to carry us off to agrarian world from the choking modern city. He is essentially a poet of pastures and plains, mountains and rivers, woods and gardens, groves and bowers, fruits and flowers, seeds and birds. To him, woods are lovely, dark, and deep. On earth's the right place for love. I don't know whether it's likely to go better. I would like to go by climbing a birch tree and climb back black branches up a snow white trunk toward heaven till the tree could bear no more but dipped its top and set me down again. Frost has a tendency to philosophize but is free from didacticism. It has been explained by Lewis in these words: he is a serious moralist as well as a serious artist, but his peculiar intimacy with nature prevents him from being openly didactic. He teaches like nature in parables, sometimes merely presenting a picture, a mood, a narrative, and leaving you to draw your own conclusions, never permitting himself more than the tender, humorous sort of comment we find at the end of Birches. I would like to get away from earth a while and then come back to it and begin over. May no fate wilfully misunderstand me and half grant what I wish and snatch me away, not to return. Earth is the right place for love. I don't know whether it's likely to go better. The language used is usually simple and clear. Some of its lines have epigrammatic force and terseness. The poem is remarkable for the poet's mastery over blank verse too. The poem is written in a very simple and clear language and conversational style. Some of its lines shaves epigrammatic force and terseness. The poem consists of a series of beautiful pictures of nature and of man, and each sketch is hit off in a few happy touches and is complete in itself. The swinging of the birches, tossed by the ice storms and looked on at by a boy in the early hours of the day till the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching onto the snow crust, such heaps of broken glass to sweep away, you would think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. Makes a genuine appeal. It is a striking picture of nature and of man rendered in terms of prominent imagery, an imagery that combines both fact and fancy. The second picture in the poem is that of the trees with their trunks arcing in the woods. The ruffled atmosphere of the swinging birches is compared here to girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. There is a striking between the images, arcing trees and the girls in disheveled hair, and each image renders the other more prominent. In the main, the poem seems to be narrative or descriptive in intent. The philosophical statement at the end of the poem serves as finale to a series of pictures which are significant for their shrewd turns. About the imagery of the poem, Professor Saxena writes, the crystal ice becomes heaps of broken glass, which is compared to the inner dome of heaven. The arched trees are transformed into girls on hands and knees, the girls who throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. The country boy whose only play was what he found himself, riding and subduing his father's birches, becomes the mature poet. One has just to quote a few lines to show the vividness and power of Frost's imagery. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells, shattering and avalanching on the snow crust, such heaps of broken glass away. You would think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. Frost does not see the country with the eyes of the carefree vagabond or the city stick romantic who finds it as charming and refreshing as a new mistress. He has for it rather the understanding, slightly quizzical look a man gives the wife of his he has for it rather the understanding, slightly quizzical look a man gives the bosom of his wife. It is no spirit of nature which sends frosts, rain, or wind. He neither sees in the natural world the pervading spirit Wordsworth saw. The mountain is not a personality as it is for Wordsworth in the Prelude and in other poems. Frost did not idealize or glorify the objects of nature. He saw them as things with which and on which man acts in course of the daily work of gaining a livelihood. He rarely makes his lesson or his philosophy of nature as overt and obvious as Wordsworthian simplicity of style in his descriptions of nature. In his poem Birches, we find Frost's capacity for minute description and accurate description at their best, and the opening lines of the poem are a characteristic example of the same. He gives here a smile, a concrete description of the habits of birches and the changes wrought upon them by wind and ice storms. Young boys who swing on them. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, I like to think some boys been swinging them, but swinging doesn't bend them down to stay. Loaded with ice, a sunny winter morning, after a rain they click upon themselves, as the breeze rises and turned many colored, as the stir cracks and crazes their enamel, soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells. Frost's accuracy of description is accompanied by delicacy of feeling and imagination. In the words of Untermeyer, Birches, one of Robert Frost's most widely quoted poems, beautifully illustrates the poet's power, the power to blend observation and imagination. He begins in a tone of easy conversation. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter, darker trees, and then, without warning or change of tone, the reader is arrested by a whimsical image, and the fact turns into a fancy. I like to think some boys been swinging them. Fact and fancy play together throughout the poem. The crystal eyes becomes heaps of broken glass. You would think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. The arched trees are transformed into girls on hands and knees, that how their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. That bow actually. The country boy whose only play was what he found himself, riding and subduing his father's birches, becomes the mature poet who announces, Earth is the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. Though Frost is regarded preeminently as a poet of nature, man holds a more important place in his poetry than nature. He himself was conscious of the fact when he said, I guess I'm not a nature poet who have written two poems without a human being in them. The speaker of the poem. Many readers assume that the speaker is Robert Frost himself, an interpretation that aligns with the fact that Frost used to swing from birch trees as a youngster in New England. There isn't actually much identifying information in the poem itself when it comes to the speaker. However, apart from the fact that this is a person who lives near birch trees and winter snow. What is clear though is that the speaker of birches is an adult who looks back on childhood with nostalgia, wishing it were possible to recapture the same sense of joy and adventure that children exhibit. More specifically, the speaker likes to imagine that a boy has been climbing nearby birch trees and riding them to the ground, even though the speaker knows that the trees are actually bent because they have been stooped by ice. This reveals the speaker's tendency to look beyond the surrounding circumstances, in order to focus on more imaginative realities. It also eventually becomes clear that the speaker used to swing from birches as a child but no longer does this as an adult. This in turn suggests that adult life has stamped out the speaker's tendency to seek out childish joy, though the speaker hopes to one day become a swinger of birches again. The setting of the poem. The poem takes place in a birch filled forest during winter. The birches are bent, stooping toward the snowy ground due to the weight of the ice encasing their limbs. It's also fair to say that these woods are in a relatively remote area, since the boy the speaker imagines lives too far from town to join a local baseball team. More specifically, the poem likely takes place somewhere in New England. After all, birch trees tend to grow in northern areas, and Robert Frost himself lived in New England and used to swing from birches as a child. The literary and historical context of birches. The literary context. Robert Frost worked on birches from 1913 to 1914 and included it in his collection Interval, which was published in 1916. Frost's third book, Mountain Interval, also features the famous poems The Road Not Taken and Out Out, and as a whole marked an important moment in Frost's career. Indeed, poems like Birches and The Road Not Taken signaled a slight departure from his early poetry, which often took the form of dramatic monologues. By contrast, the poems in Mountain Interval were more meditative, often set in nature and drawing upon the naturalistic philosophical themes that had already defined Frost's writing. Birches was partially inspired by a poem called Swinging on a Birch Tree by the 19th century poet Lucy Larcom. But whereas Larcom's poem is short, light, and cheerful, Birches is long, thoughtful, and somewhat melancholy, ultimately sharing more in common with the work of a poet like John Keats, whose poems did in fact influence Frost with their romantic themes and contemplative tone. Frost wrote Birches, this is the historical context, while living in England in the years before World War One. With this, we come to an end of the analysis and understanding of the poem Birches by Robert Frost. Thank you.